Support for 100 Watts in a Wire is provided by Bioenno Power. If you're looking for a power solution, check out Bioenno Power, offering the best lithium phosphate batteries for your ham radios. Visit bioennopower.com. That's BIOENNOPOW.com. LDG Electronics provides state-of-the-art antenna tuners for every amateur need. An LDG desktop tuner works automatically with nearly any station and up to 1,000 watts. LDG power tuners are ideal for portable and mobile use as they consume almost no current and can be powered by internal batteries that last up to a year. LDG tuners are backed by our 2-year, fully transferable warranty and our legendary customer service, the best in the industry. Visit us on the web at ldgelectronics.com.
And now, from Grid Square Echo Mike 48, this is 100 Watts and a Wire.
Hello and welcome to the 100 Watts and a Wire podcast. My name is Christian. My call sign is Kilo Zero, Sierra Tango Hotel, episode 331. This is the first episode of a new feature called 30 Days. Let me tell you about it real quick. A member of our 100 Watts and a Wire community can participate in the 30-day peer review system. Okay, this is where if you have a 100-watt ID and all 4 of our participants, the cohort, if you will, have 100-watt IDs, you can get those easy enough at 100wattsandawire.com. Click the 100-watt ID tab. Everything is free. Once you have that, you can register to be a reviewer. You can join this cohort of peers who are testing ham radio or ham radio adjacent products. This week, we're going to be looking at an antenna I'd never heard of before from this company. It's spelled B-I-L-A-L, Bilal. I want to say Bile, but that isn't right. And being respectful for 30 years in the business, I won't say that, but they make an antenna I've never seen before. It is a 20-meter Isotron. 20-meter Isotron. And for our friends who are watching this, perhaps on the YouTube, you can see this. We have a YouTube channel for our friends who want to see this antenna. Go ahead over there and take a look at it if you want. You can do that. And I got some guests with me here today. We've got Dave, Kilo India 7, Victor Lima, Victor. We've also got Curtis, Whiskey United 3, United. Andrew, he's November 7, Delta United, Charlie. Hope I got that right. And Mark is here, Kilo Charlie 3, Julia Tango Foxtrot. And here's how it's going to go. We've got a set of criteria. This is our first time around. We may hit a couple of potholes. We'll find out. But what we want to do is talk about this antenna from the point where you received it to the point where you suggest improvements or you let it go. Kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down. After all, this is a $85 antenna, and I figure letting the people in your community review this may give you a better heads up. 3 or 4 are definitely better than one person giving you this review. Hello to all the fellows. We're going to start off with Dave. Dave, welcome to the show. You got this antenna in the mail. You won the lottery, so to speak. You got yourself an $85 antenna to put up in the month of December. I could almost feel the resentment of, oh, Christian, you should have picked me for something on the inside, man. You know, it was one of those kind of things. I'm like, who can hang an antenna in December? So we studied it over the month of December, and the guys have come back to talk a little bit about it. Let's talk about the packaging. I know this isn't a very in-depth conversation or a bit of the criteria, but when you received the antenna, what were your impressions of getting it in the mail?
Well, Christian, thanks for having me on here. I'll just dive right in. I have the packaging right here. It's a repurposed box, good on them for reuse and recycle. I was a little taken aback at first, but hey, if that keeps costs down and makes it a less expensive antenna, then we'll go for it. Got some paper in here to keep it all together. It's a pretty solid antenna, so it didn't look very banged up. I mean, it's solid aluminum and some stainless steel parts and some PVC, it looked like. Um, I would say the short answer is it works. I operate mostly digital modes, and the most I could get with it, it was only FT8 that I used it on. And when I did SDVR tests with the radio, after going through the procedures, which were a little convoluted, by the way, this is the max I could get. I could not get below 3. So I have it hooked up with a LDG 100 tuner, and it works. I mean, I was getting, see, it's at the map here, I was getting FN 55, looks like Maine, with the FT8 and some JS8. I was getting all the way down to Florida a couple times, and one Japan. So, I mean, it works.
All right, hold that thought. Hold that thought. You're going way too ahead. You're going way ahead there. I'm going to put you in a timeout. If I knew how to drop the mute button, I would. No, I appreciate that. Hang tight. Hang tight. We'll get there. So it came in a packaging. You were, did he leave? We didn't send him up. I didn't hang up on him. He might have left himself. All right. Let's talk to Curtis. See, Curtis, all of a sudden he just dropped right off. Whiskey United 3 United, another lottery winner here. And we're moving over now to talk to Curtis. Curtis, let us know what you thought. Getting in a package in the mail, I know we are hams. We start to think about multi-boxing. Why would you put it in a box like this? Any of those kind of thoughts when you received it?
Well, when I first got it, I definitely realized it was sort of no-frills packaging is probably the best way to put it. Then I started thinking about it. This thing's going to be up in the air, out in all the elements and everything like that. So what's the difference that it got shipped in a basic cardboard box?
All right, so it banged around a little bit. You know, I have to say I get a little funny with my packaging now. I laugh at Amazon for putting something this small in a box that's 3 feet with a ton of padding. But when it comes to my ham radio gear, man, you better but double box it and make sure it's, you know. But I think that's the point of this is to every dollar counts, you know, and we're trying to save people down the line. And this isn't the overall review of this. This is just simply packaging. But getting it out in the mail and receiving it does give you a feeling as a consumer that you're dealing with something strong.
Yeah, I think when you pay for something, like you said, you're expecting something to be a little more significant. But, hey, it is what it is. And like I said, it's going to be out and up in the air where anything's going to get to it, whether all the elements, birds are going to be sitting on it, who knows what else. So it wasn't a big deal to me, but it was a little surprising that it was in the box. It doesn't really take anything away from the antenna from me, but it wasn't in an Apple packaging, and I think we get used to that.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective when you're going to hang it outside in the rain and the elements. Maybe I got you. I understand what you're saying. Let's talk with Andrew. Andrew was another lottery winner. And when I say lottery winner, all the names with the 100-watt IDs, they register and agree to take on this task to put something up for 30 days. And I'll pick the next bunch of names and I'll send you an email and say, you know, you're up. You in or you could pass. You go back and you stay in the pot the whole time. But Andrew is November 7, Delta United. Charlie, what did you thinking? We're talking about just receiving the package. Usually as hams, we've got this level of excitement to just be getting some gear in the mail. What did you think when it arrived on your doorstep?
Yeah, thanks for having me. When the package showed up, kind of similar experience as everybody else is saying. It showed up in a plain box, which is, you know, kind of nice in the aspect of it's not really flagging what's in the box, what's coming to your house type things, which I appreciate that generally. The box did its job. I did take a picture for you and shared that. The box took some damage in transit, but it did its job. It got the antenna to my house safely. Nothing really on the inside had any issues. Everything like was shown before. It was padded well, packed into the box well. The box held up. It's a no frills box, but it succeeded in what it was intended to do. So,
well, there you go. Yeah, good deal. Okay, cool. That's fair enough assessment on that. It worked. It got it there for you, and it arrived in one piece. Very good.
Yep.
Let's check in with Mark, Kilo Charlie 3, Juliet Tango Foxtrot. You also were a lottery winner for this antenna, And we'll get into some of the other details of why this works for certain people and maybe perhaps not others. Just packaging alone, Mark, any thoughts on the way you received it?
I thought the packaging was adequate. It did its job. It was packed in there nicely. It was wrapped. Like a few of the others have said, I didn't expect any damage to it or anything. It's going to be outside. I will say one thing is they did send me an email when they shipped it with a tracking number, so I knew it was on the way. So overall, I give them a pass.
Good. All right. So there we go. That's a good starting point. We got one part of the criteria in line. No delays. Everything came out okay. And an interesting perspective there. I feel that it's going to be something that you hang outside, so it's different than maybe you have something that's inside of your shack. Interesting perspective there. I'd like to jump now to the manual. Let's look at the manual for the Isotron antenna, the 20-meter Isotron. Now, the manuals, we've heard people talk a little bit about. They're not as detailed. You also have hams that will say things like, who reads a manual? We're hams. We just jump right into it. Let's go around here with our cohort now. And Dave, tell us a little bit about the manual itself. Was it something that good reading? Was it informative? Did it teach you anything about the antenna? Was it sufficient? Oops, you're muted, I think.
I would say it was definitely sufficient. I kind of gave up on it after a little while, and I switched to the online version of it. It was kind of hard to read for my eyes. I kind of went into readers nowadays, but it worked. It kind of went a little convoluted for me, just a little bit, but it looked basic, and I didn't really spend too much time on the manual. I just, like I said earlier, I just kind of went to it and assembled it. It looked like it goes this way. It looked like it's symmetrical this way. And I threw it up after that. So not too much time on the manual for me.
Interesting point about the eyes. I'm the same way. I'm getting to the point now where I've got a magnifying glass around here. You might laugh, but maybe you have one too. I certainly need one when I'm soldering and that sort of thing, and it comes to words now. So it's an interesting point. Maybe, and did you say that the manual, they provided it online too?
Yeah, I just went to the website and I found it. So, the Zoom was definitely more beneficial than reading the paper manual itself.
Okay, perfect. Curtis, what did you think of the manual? Was it helpful for you?
Well, when I got the box and opened it up, I did read through the manual, and it was a new antenna to me. I'd never heard of the manufacturer before, never heard of the antenna. So I thought, if I'm going to test this, I want to give it the best chance possible and take to heart what the guy had written in the manual. But after reading through it maybe once or twice, I just kind of set it aside. And I did go back to it when I started to tune it up, because I just wanted to make sure I knew which way was going to raise or lower the sweet spot of the antenna. So I didn't really go through it too much other than just when I first took it out of the box. But manual's a manual. I see poor technical writing all the time. I see good technical writing. So it was just something I kind of set aside after I went through it.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go over to Andrew.
So I don't really have any opinions on it, because I think I have it sitting over here somewhere, but it didn't really matter. I think I got what I needed out of the manual.
Okay. So, that worked for you too then. All right. Andrew, what did you think?
Similar basic experience. The manual, read through it a couple of times before I actually got set up to get the antenna outside, and then read through it again when I was actually getting the antenna installed. Overall, the writing was fine. It explained everything. One of the things that I will say about the manual, though, I did notice it kind of was a little bit choppy as far as how it presented the information. When you started off in the, page 1, here's the instructions of how to install the antenna. And then you get to page 2, and it jumped to the warranty at that point. And then it jumped back into tuning it and getting everything else all set up. So it presented the information sufficiently, and all the different sections were actually titled had a little heading on them, which was great. Jump to whatever you needed, but it a little bit disjointed in that regard. The warranty information, throw that on the back page, and don't worry about putting that right up front. Give you a quick start guide maybe at the beginning, and then work through the fine tuning of it would have been a little bit better to process. But I mean, yeah, once I read through the one time, similar to what's already been said, the process was relatively simple. Had a couple of things as I got the installation and the tuning done that I just wanted to go back and double check, make sure I'd done things right. And we'll get to that part of everything else here in a minute. But it presented the information well enough.
Okay, good deal. Mark, what do you think here when we talk about manuals? There's different sides. There's some very technical ham radio operators, and then there's guys like me. So but sometimes guys like me really need that detail. What did you think there in terms of taking it out and seeing the documentation?
I'm not a technical ham either, like you. The one thing that struck me is it looked like it was typed in the 70s and photocopied, and it reminded me of something I had gotten in elementary school as a child, where the teacher would staple the middle of a couple of pages of paper, and that's how it kind of looked to me. The information was fine. I did take a shortcut. I watched a couple of YouTube videos about the antenna before I received it, but I did read the manual, and it was certainly sufficient. All right.
Well, that's important. That's good information. I certainly do love when the companies have the documentation online, from the point that Dave made with your eyes and being able to blow it up a little bit or, make it larger on your computer. I also, though, I understand the side of it where you want to have it in your hand to take it with you to go outside. You may not have a tablet or a computer with you when you need it, but I do like that they put it online and offer that as an option for you. I want to talk about a little bit about assembly now and how the fellas put this antenna up. It's important to know the conditions they put it up in. How was the assembly? How was the install? What did it look like on their side? So let's dig in a little bit further now and find out how high it was, how good it was in terms of the actual physical putting it together and getting it up. Let's start with Dave. Dave, what did you think when it came to the part where, all right, it was assembled, you put it together, now it was time to take it outside? What happened?
For me, I mounted it to a steel conduit and then put it up on a mounting bracket near the peak of my roof. I went through the instructions a little bit to try to tune it. I couldn't get a very good tune on it, so I just kind of left it where it was in place on the roof and just started to operate. Again, like I said earlier, it worked, but I just kind of threw it up there and started going to work with it. I did, I'm not, like you said earlier, a technical ham. I just like something to take it out of the box and work. The assembly, like you mentioned, was quite easy. The instructions, they were adequate for what it was. They kept it loose in the box just to keep it the parts together, and then it just needed a little bit of assembly. And after I tightened it, I just put it on the conduit and then put it onto the bracket onto the roof, and then from there I just left it and went from there.
I'm showing an image to folks down the line. I know our listeners, they can go back and check this out. You can certainly go to isotronantennas.com. For me, I wish they had a secure website there. That makes me feel a little better. That's a mental thing. It's not much. I'm sure everything's fine. But it is one of those things that you can tell up there when it tells you not secure. But anyway, we're looking at it tonight on the screen. Just to take a look at it, and if you're on YouTube or if you're listening at home and you're curious to see what this antenna looks like, it's really interesting. And I didn't know if this was, is this snake oil? Is this the next best thing? What it was. Let's go over to Curtis. Curtis, what was your experience with assembly and install?
Well, the assembly was easy. I mean, I think there was only a couple of parts I had to put on that, or mainly just that little doghouse on top of it, whatever you want to call it, the shield. Is kind of what it looked like. That was all easy putting on. I would have liked to see them use lock washers and things like that. There was nothing on there. I was a little concerned that when I went to tune it, that it might not hold where I had it tuned for, and I'll go into that in a little bit.
Okay.
On one of the other go rounds here, but all in all, it was easy to put together. I used it. I mounted it on one of those painter's poles that you get from a home center. I think the one that I got's 23.5 feet or something like that. And I just strapped it to the fence out back and raised it up. There's, I think, 3 sections or so. There you go. There's the picture there. The one on the left, the one on the right is an open stub J pole that I built. But I put it on there and just kind of strapped it to the fence and kept working it back and forth to try to tune it. I don't know if you want me to go into the tuning part of it right now or not.
Let's go. We'll talk about assembly and deployment now, and then we can get into how it did. Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, I just clamped it to that. I mean, it has the clamp on it and everything like that, and it holds really well and everything. But the one thing I didn't see in the manual, if it was there, I missed it. The bottom part that's out on the end that has a little square piece of metal. I wasn't sure which orientation that was, because if you grabbed it with your hand, you could kind of twist it a little bit, even though it was tightened down. Mine ended up sort of in a diamond pattern with the point being at the top. So I just left it that way. I'm not sure that was detrimental to the tuning, because I did get it to tune pretty well, but I didn't see anything in the manual on whether that thing should be parallel to the top of it or whether the point should be up.
Okay. All right. Let's go over to Andrew. Andrew, tell us about your assembly and your install.
Similar kind of setup as everybody else. Pulling it out of the box and getting everything ready to go. It was an easy install. Everything was basically assembled. Had to tighten down nuts on a couple of spots with the sheet metal pieces on the front end of it. Had a couple of issues with the pole setup that I used. That picture right there is the antenna sitting just shy of 12 feet. That was the initial install. That mast I keep anchored to the chain link fence there. I ended up moving stuff around a little bit more, trying to get the antenna to perform better. But with that particular one, it's one of those military surplus fiberglass, the like 4.5 foot sections. The U-bolt that was on there was just enough that I could actually mount it on top of that mast section. Any tighter and I'd have had problems. So, a thinner pole, like a painter's pole, would have been fantastic for it. But I ran into some of those same problems, like with that small square on the bottom part, in trying to figure out the orientation on it. It, for me, kept rotating as well. It didn't rotate freely. It stuck once it was tightened down. But trying to figure that out, looking at the website and the images that you were showing on the website tonight already, it looks like it should be parallel to the ground. So I tried to keep it in that. Later on, when I was testing it, I played with it a little bit more, just rotating it and doing the diamond configuration versus parallel to the ground. But yeah, for the most part, like I said, it was assembled. Just needed some tightening down, and maybe it was loose in the box to prevent damage or something like that. But lock washers would have been great. I didn't try it with Loctite or anything like that. I gave them some good oomph to get them tightened down and locked down, and it hasn't moved. In the meantime, we've had some good winds. We've had some good snow where I'm at. Nothing's come loose. It's definitely held up. So the assembly works, but there is some of those little finesse things that might help a little bit better, at least mentally, make you feel a little more comfortable with the antenna.
Okay, good stuff. Mark, let's talk about your deployment. What did it look like, your assembly, and the way you deployed it?
Yeah, I didn't have any problems assembling it. I deployed it on two pieces of conduit. So it was up about 20 feet, and I didn't have any problems getting it tuned up or anything. So I was relatively pleased. I thought it was fairly easy.
All right, good deal. All right, now, this is the part of the Isotron 20-meter antenna test that I think we've all been curious about. It's how did this thing perform? How did it tune? How does it tune? And we've seen the pictures on the website. We've seen some of the pictures on YouTube. Let's go to the guys and find out how she tuned up. How did you tune it? And how did it perform? Let's go to the test phase of the Isotron 20-meter antenna. Let's start with Dave. Let's talk a little bit about your numbers. You got this thing up in the air. This is the part as hams we get super excited. Let's just see and how she plays. What'd you find out?
I couldn't get it below 3 to 1. I mean, that's as far as I could get with the tuning that I did. I did follow the manual. I went back and forth. My problem is that I have a 65-foot run of coax between me and the antenna. So maybe that was part of the issue. So as I stated earlier, I have it hooked up to an LDG 100 tuner, and I mostly work digital modes, and it worked. I mean, like I said earlier, I made it across the country. I made it from Washington to Florida to Maine and to Texas a couple of times, and one Japan station. So, I mean, it works during the day on 20 meters. I couldn't get it to work on any other band, even with the tuner. But, I mean, short answer, it works. I think I pull in more with my long wire antenna, but it works on 20 meters during the day.
So your 20-meter Isotron with your LDG did okay.
It did okay.
Okay, did all right.
And how, that's it, just okay.
Just okay. And how high was it above ground?
At the peak of the roof, I have it at 25 feet. In the picture I provided, it looks closer to another mast than it actually is. There's some distance between it because it does say in the manual, don't put anything metal around it. And so it is farther away than it looks. So I'm not sure. I mean, I could try another location and we'll go from there. But it works.
Did they suggest a height above ground in the manual? Somebody may have mentioned that, but I don't know if I caught it. Is it 12 feet or did they say a certain amount of height?
I could be wrong. I thought I read 25 feet at the least would be best. It even says indoors at one point. It does receive indoors. I didn't try it to transmit indoors, but it does work for receive. Okay. But 25 feet, short answer.
Okay, roger that. Curtis, talk about your height above ground, what your test what did you find?
Okay, my height above ground is about 23, 24 feet, something like that. I monitored on that painter's pole, and I have about 100-foot run of coax from the antenna to get it into the shack. I gotta say that I think that pole's in three. It's in three sections, and it's probably about 6 or 8 foot for the bottom section. So I had to stand on a 6-foot ladder every time I dropped it down. Then I must have been up and down that ladder 15 times. Every time I would get it to tune pretty well, I could see a pretty good null, but my null would never be in the center of the 20-meter band. And as soon as I would adjust it, let's just say the null was on the high side, as soon as I would adjust it to try to bring it down, then all of a sudden the SWR would just shoot up. So I was never able to get it to the center. I was never able to get the null to the center of the band. As soon as I got just beyond a certain point, then it would raise up, and it would be relatively flat across the band, but it would be high. The SWR would be pretty high. So after about 15 times or so up and down the ladder, I got it to a point where it was 3 to 1. Or let's see here, no, it was 2 to 1. Just slightly above 2 to 1. And I thought, I'm going to use this I have a Palstar HF Auto, the roller inductor tuner. And I think that thing will tune up a short on 160 meters. So I wasn't too worried about it. 2 to 1 wasn't going to be too bad. So I lowered it one more time, and then I started to tape the feed line to the pole. And when I got it back up, I think I sent you pictures of all the SWR readings there. But when I got it back up, the SWR was nearly perfect. It was 1.5 to 1 out on the ends of the band. And you couldn't see that was before I taped the feed line, and I thought that's what I was going to be stuck with, and I thought that's not too bad because I'm going to use an auto tuner, and that's okay. But the next picture, I think, if you have it there, that's when I taped the feed line and raised it all the way back up, and that was more than acceptable. I could work phone, work any of the digital modes or anything like that. And I found out a couple of things. When it rains, the null gets a little bit lower. I mean, you can see it's just below the middle of the band there right now. But that is after a rain. And I was kind of surprised about that. I think that was the one that was after a rain. And we had a lot of snow the other day. We got about 2 inches of snow. The null actually shifted to the other side. So I don't think I included a picture of that. But it was more than acceptable. I could have used it without a tuner. The tuner probably helped, touch up some of whatever was going on with it, whether it, had some minor resistance issue or capacitance issues or whatever. But more than acceptable. I was completely shocked after going up and down that ladder so many times and taping the feed line. And if I remember correctly, I think it did say something about in the manual, make sure the feed line is below is straight and below the antenna. There was some verbiage in there about that, but I didn't really take heed to that while I was tuning it.
All right, let's see if Andrew is ready. We'll see there. He's got himself muted. He may have stepped out. Let's move over to Mark, and we'll come back. Mark, how do you tune this antenna? I'm going to put this on the screen for our friends who come back and watch it on YouTube, but for our listening audience, what kind of you got to get up there? I mean, we're hearing Curtis say you got up on that ladder 15 times. Is this one of those things where you got to pull it out, push it in? How do you do it?
Well, I had mine mounted on a bracket, so I could just lower it every time I needed to do it. So I didn't have to climb up on the ladder and do all that. You just adjust that lower bar up and down. And like I said, I was able to get it tuned pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And I think you've got pictures that I sent you. On the upper portion of the band, I was 1 to 3. And I don't think I took any pictures of the digital because I work a lot of FT8. But it was right in that range on the lower end of the band.
All right. And we see 1 to 3, and I got to say, if it's I usually don't have a problem with a 1 to 3, but that doesn't bother me at all. Let me take this off. Yeah, go ahead.
My internal tuner would, tune that down.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
let me see. I got another.
I had no problems with it.
Yeah, 14.269. You're at a 1.4 in this photograph, and then on the high side, you were up at 1.3. So, yeah, that's perfectly usable under my standards. I had a contester friend of mine, Dr. Scott, I'm spacing on his call right now, but a big contester. He told me, it's 2 to 1 across and under. I'm cool with it. I'm like, all right, if you're cool with it. So that's perfectly usable in my book right there.
I mean, I made Texas on the phone portion of the band. Florida was no problem. Trying to remember because I was hunting a lot of POTA during the day, and same thing with FT8. FT8, I did really well with it. I've always been able to reach Europe pretty easily. I was hoping that this would get me west more. I have a problem getting west on 20 meters from the East Coast.
All right. Well, good. That's something we can come back and talk about that if we need to. Everybody's back in line, I believe. I need to go to Andrew. Let's go over to Andrew and talk about some of the tests that he had. What did it do for you? How did she play? Now we're good. We're all right.
Setting everything up and getting it tested. Ran into a few issues with it. I struggled to get it down to some of the better SWRs that everybody else sounds like they might have gotten. The lowest I ever could get it was a 2.6, and that was actually right in the middle of the band. It was pretty consistent across everything. I don't have my notes immediately available, but I could get to 2.6 at best, and at the ends of the band, I was sitting at about a 2.7. So it was relatively flat, but it was a little bit high. Worked on that a lot. I adjusted where I actually had it installed in the backyard, moved it around, adjusted the height a couple of times. And the one thing that I finally got to get it consistently to the SWR that I ended up getting it to was actually to add a pigtail coming off the ground side, not grounding it to the ground, but just running a loose wire that I happen to have off of one of the vertical setups that I've run in the backyard in the past. And once I did that, it kept it consistently there. Wind would shake it a little bit, and it'd creep itself up with that before I got that pigtail on there. Running it on a fiberglass mast, I don't know if that may have caused any issues with that, where the instruction manual had actually commented that you shouldn't be grounding it, but it should be connected to whatever mast you're running it on. Well, a fiberglass mast is going to insulate it, so that's where I kind of figured that's going to be a good compromise. Get a little bit more metal in there, which kind of did the trick as far as testing it was concerned. But it definitely didn't get as low as I'd wanted it to. But the internal tuner on my radio was capable of handling it just fine. Brought it down to sufficient to be able to actually use it. But what the higher SWR was doing as far as losses, ultimately, once I got it on the air after getting it installed and tuned, I think that definitely played an impact on it. Height-wise, I ended up ranging from just under 12. It's like 11 foot 9 or 10 inches, with a couple of those mast sections up to just shy of 20. I think I got it up to 18 at the highest, just with what I had available to set it up on. And height didn't really seem to impact it while I was testing it all that much. It was much more in the not orientation, but in the angle of the lower piece. If you remember on the pictures on the website, I was actually surprised, and I hadn't looked at the website pictures since getting the antenna, but it talked about adjusting that bottom beam going out. And looking at what he's got on the website there, he's actually got a negative angle on that bottom piece. And the other pictures, looking at him tonight, it looks like everybody had it crept up at a positive angle quite a bit more than what you'd expect just looking at what he's got on the website there. So it tuned up. It worked in the testing phase. With it being designed as a compromise antenna, I expected it to not be perfect. And I mean, it worked. So.
Well, working is a good thing. All right. This is our 30-day peer review system looking at the 20 meter Isotron. Let's find out what the cohort, our reviewers, your peers, what mode they used, how it performed, where they were able to make contacts. This is another part of that. Let's find out really what happened. Let's start over with Dave. Dave, you mentioned a little bit you were doing some of the digital modes. Let's get back into that and tell us a little bit about some of the accomplishments and some of the things that you were working on with it.
Sure. Well, as stated earlier, I'd been with this antenna. I was exclusively FT8, and from the Seattle area, I would make it to Maine a couple times, Florida, some Texas, and the Midwestern states, and one Japan. Surprisingly, I got one Japan out of it. In terms of receive, I'm training for a CW, and it receives well on 20 meters. I was all over the band, and I definitely received well after it was tuned with the LDG. But again, it worked. I did do one PSK 31 contact, in I believe it was Southern Texas, so that worked when PSK 31. So in terms of just the digital modes, again, I'm just going to stick with it worked, and that's about it.
All right, right on. That's fine. Kurt, what happened? What did you find out there? What did you work? Did you do single sideband? Were you working digital? And did you have any fun with it?
Well, I started off on sideband, and I was actually kind of impressed with how well it did. There's so many POTA people out there now that it's pretty easy to get on and always have somebody to at least get a signal report from and everything like that. But I talked all over the place with it. It's not very often that I hear Nevada, and I heard a guy just calling CQ on 20 meters in Las Vegas, and I had a 15 or 20 minute rag chew with the guy, and we were talking about what our stations were and everything like that. And I told him, I said, I'm testing out a 20-meter antenna. It's only about 18 inches long or so. And he said, so you're really telling me that you're talking to me on an 18-inch antenna? And I said, yeah, and I was running 100 watts. And like I said, it worked out very well. I didn't have any fading or anything like that. I talked to a guy in Florida. I used to live there a long time ago for a short period of time and had a rag chew with a guy in a town down there. I have to admit I put a little bit more than a KW through it just to see if it would take it a couple of times, and that worked out very well. I nothing's happened with the SWR, and all that seems very well. And I just built one of these QRP Labs QDX 5-watt digital transceivers. So I got to use this and really test it out mainly on 20 meters. And I made contacts all over the place. Only a couple of DX contacts with the 5 watts, just barely, into Italy and stuff like that. But it did well. I had some contacts out to the East Coast, and I don't do FT8 a lot, but when I do, I typically run about 35 watts. So it was a very good test for the antenna to only run 5 watts and see where I could get. In fact, I think I might have sent you an image there, if you have it, that has some of the phone contacts and some of the FT8 contacts in it. There's a map there. There might be a different one with different colors. That was running Whisper with 5 watts one day, which that's a little bit more than most people want to run on Whisper. But those are my Whisper contacts. Now this isn't all the contacts, but the let's see here. The blue contacts are FT8 contacts. So you can see I made it out to California with 5 watts and up into looks like Nova Scotia or somewhere like that. And the other ones were phone contacts. I had more than that, but that just happened to be what I uploaded to the QSO log or whatever that's called, QSOmap.org or something like that.
So, Kurt, where are you in the country?
Well. I'm in Elizabeth, Pennsylvania. It's about 10 miles south of Pittsburgh.
Okay, so you're East Coast
you can
guy.
See I don't have any close blue contacts. These are all just the 20-meter contacts only.
Yeah, and so looking at it, and for our friends that are listening to this on their treadmills or wherever they are, he's got some contacts to his northeast, up in the northeast. He's got a nice cluster in the Midwest, up and down, looks up to Michigan and down to Louisiana, and then all the way out to California, all the way out to the ocean. So that's a pretty nice spread.
5 watts. So that was impressive for that.
How high did you have this antenna? Because the picture looks like you were up there quite a bit.
No, if you go back to the picture, those are I think those are called Mr. Long Arm painter poles, and they're I think 23.5 foot. So it's extended up all the way. There's two antennas in that picture. The one in the foreground here, the open sub J pole, is a lot closer than what it appears in the image there. But those are both at the exact same height. The yard kind of slopes down just a little bit. The other thing I wasn't sure about is whether it was directional. When you look at this antenna, it looks like something you'd see on a TV news like ENG truck or something from a long time ago that they might do microwave stuff with. So I pointed mine towards the west, or excuse me, I pointed it towards the east because I figured if it's directional, I wanted the best chance of being able to work some DX and everything like that. But it turns out it's omnidirectional, and you look at the map and got out to California and everything like that. So it definitely is omnidirectional, and I was more than impressed with the rag chew that I had with the guy in Las Vegas. Like I said, it's not common for me to hear them, and I typically use a 44-foot end-fed wire just with a 9-to-1 Ballon, and I think this antenna here is pretty much as good as what that antenna does, and I would not have thought that that was going to be the case. I mean, you'd think you'd need something with a radiator to be equal to an antenna like that, but it was very impressive. I'm a skeptic, and when I took it out of the box, I thought, oh, let's see what this is going to do, but I'm going to give it a fair test. I may have to go on Kristen's show here and say what I really think about it, but I've told a lot of people about it, and a lot of people that I've had the QSOs with, I told them, well, I'm testing an antenna, and can you give me a real signal report and let me know how I'm doing there? So I think it works well. I mean, I think it's a good field day antenna, and POTA and everything like that. I think it would work very well. I think you collapse a pole down or something, whatever you happen to have, and take it with you. And might take you a little while to get it tuned in the field. I'm a little worried about that bottom arm kind of moving a little bit, but mine's been up since the day I got it, and the SWR stayed really solid. So I got to think that without any guying on that painter's pole, that thing will sway back and forth sometimes in a strong wind, a good 1.5 or 2 feet. So it's hold its tuning since day one.
Thank you for that. Let's go over to Andrew. Andrew, tell us about your bands of operation or your modes of operation and some of the contacts you made.
So I ran it barefoot, 100 watts in there, mostly on upper sideband, not normally set up to do a lot of digital or anything. First turning on the radio with it hooked up, it sounded really good. It sounded quiet. Signal to noise ratios were actually really good, just quiet. We're, like I said, mostly sideband. Didn't get a whole lot of contacts with it though, in all honesty. I don't know if that was a matter of when I was operating, but I did try it morning, midday, evening. Tried to run this thing across the entire day. Across all portions of the band that I was running in on a given day. And I made some contacts. It was quiet. It was quiet on receive. It was quiet on transmit. The signal reports that I ended up getting with the contacts that I made on it were very low. I had one guy give me I think it was a 1.3 on my signal report there, which I mean, we completed the contact, which was great. So it worked. It was quiet though, and it would have been good. I really did want it to work better. I actually took down a 2-meter J pole so that I could take the feed line off of that and I run a DX Commander Lite as my normal antenna for HF operations, and kept it so I could keep both of them plugged in and switch between the two antennas. And a couple of times I tried, maintaining a contact that I'd gotten on the DX Commander, switch over to the Isotron 20, and I'd lose the contact at that point, switch back over to the DX Commander, and it was right back. Not trying to advertise another antenna or anything, but it worked when I could get it, and when I could get somebody to stay on there with me. I'm in northern Utah, so not quite to the West Coast, but out there by Nevada. I actually hear Las Vegas all the time from where I'm at, and on my DX Commander, and didn't hear anybody in Nevada. A couple of the contacts that I made were just over the border into Canada, and then hearing everybody coming in from the Midwest, coming in from the East Coast, they were clear on receive for sure, but getting back out to them was definitely a bit of an issue. And I don't know if that was just a matter of location, sitting in the suburbs, or if that was a matter of takeoff angle, running into the mountains. Because I'm sitting right at the foothills of the mountains up here in northern Utah, just north of Salt Lake City. But I haven't run into those same issues with other antennas that I've run, running just a wire dipole, and fed half wave. Those really haven't had those same problems. Like I said before, during the install testing portion, excuse me, I modified where I had the antenna sitting at height wise, and that didn't seem to impact it at all. It worked. It got me some contacts, but it wasn't. Honestly, given a choice, I mean, I had other options that were available, but I wanted to keep using it through the 30 days and see what we could do with it. It's got its purpose for sure, being a compromised antenna intended for tight spaces. But if you've got the space,
there's other options.
I'd have preferred to switch back over to something else.
Yeah, you guys are very friendly, very, very polite. Thank you for your honesty on that stuff. Mark, tell us, how did you use this antenna and who did you talk to?
It worked surprisingly well. I was very pleased with it. Yeah, I have a situation where I have a very small lot that I'm working with, and so just about every antenna I have would be a compromise. The usual antenna that I've been using is an off-center fed, and I have to say this antenna worked very comparable to my off-center fed. On the phone portion, I was reaching Texas, and you don't always get an accurate signal report when you're hunting a lot of POTA, but I could hear them, they could hear me. The noise level on it was very good. And on FT8, I mean, it seemed to perform just about as well as my off-center fed does. So overall, I was very pleased. From my standpoint, like I said, everything's a compromise for me. So I would definitely continue to use it. And I have plans to do that.
Good, because you own it. It's yours. Everybody gets to keep it. That's the that's the benefit of the test. And I certainly
another thing I would like to do.
Yeah.
Another thing I would like to do is mount it in my attic in the house and see how that works for me.
Okay.
Because my shack is out in the backyard. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to take it down and mount it inside the attic and see how it does in there.
Okay. Good deal. All right, the Isotron 20-meter antenna, going through our 30-day review with our cohort here, all 100-watt ID holders. They registered to be reviewers. They're giving you an honest review system. That way, you have more options. We got 4 people talking about this antenna now. Here's an important one. I want to talk about the curb appeal. And you might say, Christian, what do you mean the curb appeal? I mean, how does this thing look when it's at your house? Is it going to pass your wife test? Does it pass your own test? Let's start with Dave. Dave, what do you think about the look of the antenna, where you have it? Is it something that's okay? Is it very visible? That sort of thing. What do you think?
It is definitely visible, yes. It did pass the wife test because it is, the picture that I sent, it is in a cluster of antennas in the back of the house. That's why it proved the wife test. The rule I was given was, if it's in my line of sight, you need to take it down. There's no negotiation with that. So the gentleman who stated he'd put it into the attic, that too is a good idea. Before getting in the radio, I was an HOA president, and it definitely looks like an antenna that I'd take notice of. So putting it in the attic is a good idea. I do like the look of it. It does have a kind of a space age sort of a sci-fi look to it, and I wonder what my neighbor would think of it, because it is pointed. It looks like it'd be pointed at his direction, so maybe he thinks I'm up to something nefarious or eavesdropping on his house comms. I'm not sure, but it did pass the wife test. It does look like an antenna, and it fits well with what I have back there already. It's one of 4 antennas back there, so wife just gave me a shrug and rolled her eyes, so it passed.
That's good. We'll take it. That's a good one. Let's go over to Kurt. What do you think? Curb appeal, does it work for you? Does it work for the family?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I don't think anybody has any issues with it. I mean, it's in with a couple of other antennas. I have a 10-meter Ringo up back there and that open stub J pole and everything. So it's really not that bad. And I think if somebody's in an HOA and, or any place, I think it's starting to be a little more common to let people put up, HD over the air antennas. I think it kind of blends in with that where somebody wouldn't know the difference. There's a lot of different shapes and sizes when it comes to those antennas. So I think somebody could really pull it off as being that type of antenna. And like the other guy said, it's kind of cool looking. It's sort of futuristic looking and sort of like, you used to, you always saw the news vans putting up the Aggies and stuff like that. So it kind of looks like that. That's what I thought of when I took it out of the box. But I'll be honest, when I took it out of the box, I thought, oh, this might be something I'm going to be selling at a ham fest one day. But I'm going to keep it. I mean, it definitely has worked well for me, and I don't think anybody else has noticed. I have pretty good neighbors. They don't really have any issues with anything, and they think we're all a little bit goofy with the antennas and stuff like that. But one more, I don't think it's that big of a difference for anybody to put it up and mounting it on the painter's pole. It was a almost a match for it. And somebody else said that the U-bolt on it was pretty close to not working out, but it clamped down on there. And if I would have had to put something maybe to shim it or whatever, that wouldn't have been a big deal either. But I don't think anybody would have any problem with it, and as long as people are putting these over the air antennas up, this blends in very well.
Andrew, this does have a different look about it, and again, for our people who are listening and then later on watching this portion of the podcast. It's not quite the look of a weather station, but and I don't have the details here. It's 21 inches by 8 inches by 4 inches. Not quite a weather station, but not really a ton of wire. It's not a lot of. It's a different thing. Did it pass the curb test for you?
Absolutely. Like it's been mentioned before. It's kind of sci-fi looking. At the same time, it also yard art. It kind of looks like a birdhouse, bird feeder kind of situation up on a pole. The only thing that really, I think, gives it away and really makes it look like an antenna is a feed line running into it. The feed line comes in from the side, and so you end up with a little bit of a loop there that you're not going to see on something else like that. But, sitting 15, 20 feet in the air, it's kind of fun looking. It doesn't stand out anymore, I think, than like a J-pole or something like that sitting at the same height. I've had neighbors ask me about the antennas that I've got in the backyard, and it's an attention getter, but it's not so out there that somebody's really going to take issue with it, like was said. I don't live in an HOA, so I've got no perspective on that one, but I imagine, like was just mentioned, with all the other over-the-air antennas that are going up, satellite dishes, things like that, I don't imagine that, if you reasonably worked with somebody, that they would really have a problem with it. It's not a quarter wavelength vertical that's going to stand out and really draw attention or something like that. It's just kind of there. And even then, it's small enough, easy enough to move around if you needed to, if you were in a circumstance like that. Put it up when you're operating, take it down when you're done. Maybe you'll run into issues with tuning. That's definitely a possibility with something like this. It's not, you could bang it around and knock it out of tune, but no, it looked fun. I've enjoyed seeing. I've kind of halfway expected every time I look out the back window to see a bird sitting out there on it, just kind of perched and sitting in the sun, getting some warmth. But no, it's appearance-wise, it's fantastic.
Mark, do you agree here? We got bird feeder lawn art. Is this passing the HOA curb appeal test with the family and yourself?
Well, I just want to say first off, my lovely, lovely bride was fine with this antenna. So my kids all tease me every time I put an antenna up. But yeah, I mean, the neighbor didn't even notice that I put an antenna up. So I think it definitely passes the HOA. And yeah, it's real easy to take up and put down if you had to do that. So yeah, I think it's a home run from that aspect.
All right, now here comes the part of the 30-day review system that's really important here. And I hope that, and I've been talking to the fellas for a while now, and I don't believe that, this is suggested improvements, perhaps issues and suggested improvements to the maker. With kindness, we're gonna go around the room now and find out any issues that may have happened, how we could perhaps, or they could perhaps, make it better. Dave, what do you think when you dig back in and they talk about how could we design this better for you? What do you think?
Well, just to reiterate what the other gentleman said, lock washers would have been a big improvement. Some of those nuts, they do slip. And like the other said, I was concerned about the antenna falling out of tune, especially the lower bar part of it. So lock washers would be an improvement. I would say maybe even to the manual, maybe a little more linear instructions to the manual. Like the other gentleman said, it was a little bit disjointed. And then the U-bolt, I would say probably maybe a smaller or a small U-bolt, because I had issues on the conduit, that the conduit should be needs to be at least an inch, or else the threads don't go all the way down, at least the way I had it configured. So maybe a different size U-bolt as well, or different choices. Maybe include a couple of U-bolts. I don't know, something to think about with U-bolts, lock washers, and the manual. That's where I come out.
Thank you. Kurt, what do you think here? We talk a little bit about hardware's come up right out of the box. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, I would have liked to seen lock washers on it. And yeah, we could have put our own on, but I really wanted to test it, how it was shipped, just to be sure that I was giving it a fair test. So probably sometime soon I'll drop the thing back down and see if it's worthwhile to put lock washers on. And as I mentioned earlier, it's holding tuning. It has not shifted at all. I don't think it's. I mean, it's been up there probably well over a month. I forget when we actually got them, but not an issue at all. The manual could be a little bit different. I'm not too much. I mean, obviously we all want to look at a manual and everything like that, but it's apparent that this is probably more of a mom and pop company, and that's fine. There's a lot of them out there. I think some of the companies that make ham equipment, some of the best stuff comes from these smaller companies. And I get not wanting to put a ton of money into a manual or having a real technical writer make a manual, but there could be a little bit of improvements on that, and maybe if those guys happen to watch this, they'll understand that a little bit. But all in all, there was nothing that really affected the overall quality of the antenna. And the coil that's wound around some kind of PVC or something, I noticed when I tightened the back part of that down, I mean, it sort of compressed the PVC in a little bit. So that may act as a lock washer, being that there's a little bit of outward tension if you start to compress it a little bit. But it's fine. I mean, there's a couple things they could do, but they're not that far out of line as far as the product goes.
Andrew, anything that you can add with this? We talked a little bit about hardware, a little bit about the manual. Anything else?
No, I mean, the hardware was mentioned, but being a cottage industry production, it's not high end for sure. It's utilitarian. It's built out of materials that will do the job, that'll work, they'll last. It would just be those fine-tuning little things that I would say agree with comments on the hardware. I think as far as the manual is concerned, I don't know that the manual necessarily needs to be rewritten content-wise, but typing it up and having it on as not an image PDF, but actually as a text searchable type document again, literally just retyping it would probably go a long ways in helping people be able to navigate it and look at it. Appearance wise, I mean, it was mentioned earlier, it looks dated, but it works. So You don't necessarily need to fix it. It's refinement would be the only thing.
Right. Mark, what did we miss here? We've heard some good suggestions, and hopefully it can help the manufacturer. We all understand it costs money to package, the hardware and all these sorts of things. What do we miss? Anything that you can provide the maker to perhaps improve this antenna system?
I really wished I had something to tell them, but honestly, just the hardware and the manual pretty much sums it up. I mean, there's not a whole lot to the antenna other than that. So, yeah, I think those basic things, and I think the manual just needs a little updating, and it probably wouldn't hurt if they referenced some of the YouTube videos that I looked at before I received the antenna, to tell people to go take a look at those and see how other people have deployed it. And I think they'd be good.
All right, good deal. This is where we'll wrap up our final here. I'm going to send it around the room to the guys. Kilo India 7, Victor Lima. Victor, I'll send it over to you for your final, sir. Any final words, any thoughts on this antenna system?
I enjoyed it. I definitely like the small footprint that it has. In fact, I would take it camping with me. My wife doesn't like the wires that I string everywhere, even though they're short, in-fed antennas. So, yeah, it would definitely. It's a good traveler. I'm going to take it with me for camping. A little mast. I think it'd be good.
All right, let's go over to Kurt. He's Whiskey United 3 United. Kurt, sending it over to you for your final. Whoopsie-daisy. Send it back over there. Tell me your final thoughts on this antenna system.
Well, overall, I'm impressed. Like I said, I'm a skeptic. I really thought in the beginning that when I took it out of the box, that the end result that I had was not going to be what it necessarily was. Everything was pretty straightforward with it, and I found that a lot of people that I talked to the antenna about, they had heard of it. I'm a relatively new ham. I've only been licensed going on about 6 years, so I thought I had seen almost everything. I'm a pack rat for data and information and everything like that, and I thought I would have ran across this at some point in time, and I didn't. So it kind of opened my eyes to it, and it may be interesting to try some of the other bands that they have available at some point, but I think it's a sleeper product, if that's a way to say it.
All right, over to Andrew. November 7, Delta United Charlie, you're 5'9". Let's get your final thoughts on this antenna system.
I think overall it's a decent antenna for what it is. It's a compromise antenna to fit into small spaces, be able to take it around. Camping, I think, would be a great opportunity to really put it through its paces and not have to worry about packing a whole lot of stuff that's going to get in the way, that's going to get tangled up or anything like that. I'd recommend it to people in circumstances where it's going to play to its strengths. But I'd definitely be realistic with them. Let them know that it's not necessarily a perfect antenna. And like I said, I mean, when we talked about actually running the antenna and doing operations with it, I was doing mostly sideband, and I don't know that it's necessarily the best antenna for that. From what everybody else was saying with digital, it sounds like it's probably a little bit better there. It can work. It can work for anything that you're looking for. But you've got to go into it with realistic expectations. It's not going to be a perfect antenna. It's going to take a little finagling to get everything together, and to feel comfortable with it. It doesn't look normal, but it'll do the job at the end of the day. So,
like Kurt said, I've never run across this antenna before. There is some information about it on YouTube, but I didn't see this marketing at all. Interesting looking antenna. It looks like it would work for somebody perhaps in an HOA, maybe an attic situation. So judge for yourself now, and your cohort here and your community has spoken for you and tested it for 30 days. Maybe call me crazy, but I wouldn't mind trying that 40 meter Isotron. Maybe we'll have to test that one in the coming days. We do have plans to test the DX40 with radio waves, so that's coming up next. Don't forget, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and you can watch video extras, features, and live stream on YouTube. So I'll say 73 for now. Take care of yourselves. Radio is life. That's my new saying. Of course, your family is your life. Our life intersects with ham radio, and that's what this podcast is all about. And take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you again real soon. Please, by all means, stay above the noise. 73, guys.
To join the 100 Watts in a Wire community, visit 100wattsinawire.com.